ay may iba't ibang design at salita base sa inyong pangangailangan. Mula sa boost para sa mga bata, fortitude, gusto break, miracle fruit, carinical, at ang pinakabago, liverpool. Ang equilibrium probiotics ay may pagmamalaki at produktong gawa sa kanya. Ito ay mabibili sa Lasien, Geta Road sa Sebastian Phase 3, Pinawaganan, Talaksik. At para sa mga malalayong lugar, mabibili din ang produkto ng equilibrium probiotics sa Lazada. Ito ay eksklusibong gawa ni Ginang Manu Reyes Murray. Ano pang hinihintay niyo, mga kasangga? Alam, bili na. MSB Kape at Balita sa Umaga. Hatid sa inyo ni Kuya Dog. Magandang umaga po mga kasangga. Biyernes na naman po. September 8, 2023. No? At weekend, wala ano na po, konti na lang po, weekend na. Sandali na lang po ang hihintayin natin, mga kasangga. Pahinga na naman po tayo. Kahit pa paano. Sa isang linggong bakbakan, sa isang linggong hard labor, kumbaga. Ngayon po kahit pa paano, may dalawa tayong araw, no? Sandali na lang po, ilang oras na lang hintayin nyo. Weekend na. At nandito naman po ang inyong daily MSB Kape at Balita sa Umaga, ang magbibigay po sa inyo ng daily dose of news. Mga piling-piling updates. Tayo po humahalaw ng balita sa Philippine Star. Doon po tayo kumukuha ng ating mga binabasang balita sa inyo. At ngayon po kapistahan ng feast, no? Ito, Feast of the Nativity of our Mother Mary. Ngayon po ang kapistahan niya. Ngayon na po. Piyesta po ng Concepcion. No? Ngayon po yung kapistahan ng sa bayan ng Concepcion. Yung mga yung mga taga-Concepcion diyan. Bigyan naman. At para po sa mga devout Catholics, today is a holiday of obligation. Simba po tayo. Mamaya po, kung may pagkakataon ako po pupunta ng San Miguel para magsimba din. Pero bago po natin simulan ang ating pagbalita ngayong araw na to, samahan niyo po muna ako sa isang maikling panalangin. Sa ngalan ng Ama at ng Anak ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Mahal naming lumikha, maraming salamat sa bagong araw na ipinagkaloob niyo po sa amin. Sa mapayapang gabing lumipas at sa patuloy na pagbuhos ng iyong mga biyaya sa amin at sa aming bayan. Naway ipagkaloob mo pa po sa amin ang lakas at tibay ng loob upang mapaglabanan ng kasamaan at manatili po kami sa paggawa ng mabuti sa kapwa at sa pagsunod sa iyong itinurong tamang landas. Lahat po ng gawain namin ngayong araw na ito, inaalay po namin sa iyong ngalan ng iyong anak na si Jesus, naming Panginoon. Amen.
Sa ngalan ng Ama at ng Anak ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Good morning po sa ating mga TikTok viewers. Maraming salamat sa maagang pag-antabay kay David Paisu. Thank you very much for joining me. At sa ating mga FB live streaming viewers, thank you very much for joining me as well. And sa ating mga YouTube viewers. And here is a summary of our top stories for today. Tomato price hits as high as 300 peso per kilo. Marcos hits dangerous use of Coast Guard ships. Pinoy's least satisfied with government efforts versus inflation. US, Chinese, and Russian officials gather at Southeast Asia Summit. IAS recommends dismissal of 8 cops in Gemboy's slay. LTO revokes ex-cop's driver's license. Prosecutor disbarred for foul remarks versus justices. And finally, in sports, Cone back on Gila's saddle. Our top stories for today is brought to us by Equilibrium Probiotics. Please scan the QR code to see its health benefits. Starting off with our headline story for today. Tomato price hits as high as 300 peso per kilo. Report by Bella Carriazo to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. The retail prices of tomatoes reach as high as 300 peso per kilo in Marikina City amid shortage in supply. The current price of tomato in Marikina City is higher by 70 peso compared to its previous price of 230 pesos according to monitoring of the Department of Agriculture. Meanwhile, the retail prices of tomatoes at Las Piñas City Public Market range between 200 and 210 per kilo. Guadalupe Public Market in Makati City between 180 and 200 peso per kilo. San Andres Market in Manila between 200 and 220 pesos per kilo. Quinta Market in Manila between 180 and 200 peso per kilo. Retail Market in Manila between 180 and 220 pesos per kilo. Pasay City Market between 170 and 180 pesos per kilo. Pasig City Mega Market between 170 and 180 pesos per kilo. Commonwealth Market in Quezon City, 180 per kilo, and Muñoz Market in Quezon City between 150 and 160 pesos per kilo. Mega Q Mart in Quezon City between 180 to 200 peso per kilo, and Malabon Central Market between 160 and 180 pesos per kilo. The wholesale price of the vegetable also remains high at 120 to 130 pesos per kilo. Nueva Vizcaya Agricultural Terminal or NVAT General Manager Gilbert Pumila said in a radio interview. Pumila added that based on monitoring in Tanawan, Batangas, the wholesale price of tomatoes even reached between 130 and 150 pesos per kilo. There is really a shortage in the supply of tomatoes Luzon-wide, Kumila said. At the same time, the wholesale prices of all vegetables in NVAT also increased, he noted. The wholesale price of bell pepper here is between 330 and 360 pesos per kilo. It is really expensive. All the prices of vegetables increased, including eggplant, which is cheaper 2 weeks ago, Kumila added. He said that while vegetables arrive at NVAT every day, the supply fails to meet the demand. That's the reason why prices of vegetables continue to increase, particularly tomatoes, he said. So, nagmahal na po ang kamatis. So, maghanap-hanap na po tayo ng mga pwedeng substitute muna habang mahal pa po ang presyo ng kamatis. Ako, ang ginagamit ko ngayon tomato paste sa aking pagluluto. So, pwede naman pong alternatibo ang tomato paste. Hindi lang kasing sarap ng totoong kamatis siyempre, pero pwede na. Next on our top stories, Marcos hits dangerous use of Coast Guard ships. Report by Alexis Romero to the Philippine Star. Marcos Jr. urges ASEAN leaders to take action. Jakarta. With Beijing's muscle flexing in the South China Sea becoming more brazen, President Marcos has called on leaders of East Asia to act on the dangerous use of the Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels by the Chinese. Marcos issued the call a month after a Chinese Coast Guard ship blasted the Filipino vessel with water cannon as the latter was delivering provisions to a Philippine military outpost on the grounded BRP Sierra Madre on Ayungin Shoal, which is within the country's territorial waters. The Philippines fully supports adherence to international law and the rules-based order. We must oppose the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels in South China Sea. We are concerned over illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and the militarization of reclaimed features in the South China Sea. President Marcos said at the 18th East Asia Summit here, attended by Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, and U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. We are concerned over consistent actions that are in violation of obligations under international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS, or United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, and under the DOC, or Declaration of Conduct in the South China Sea, Marcos said. He relayed the same message during the ASEAN Republic of South Korea Summit last Wednesday. The Philippines remains resolute towards a peaceful resolution of disputes. We continue to support freedom of navigation and overflight and the rules-based international order in the South China Sea, he said. We must not allow tensions in the South China Sea to further escalate. In this spirit, and in accordance with the DOC, we continue to urge all parties to exercise self-restraint and refrain from unilateral and assertive activities that would increase tensions in the region, misunderstandings, and miscalculations in the South China Sea, he added. He also recognized New Delhi's effort to support the regional bloc in calling for peace and stability in the South China Sea. Allow me also to begin by thanking India for supporting ASEAN during the last non-aligned movement meeting, where India stood in solidarity with ASEAN, especially on our call to factually update paragraphs on the South China Sea in the non-ministerial outcome document. Marcos said, we both envision a progressive Indo-Pacific that encompasses maritime cooperation to ensure sustainable use of maritime resources, particularly in tackling illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, promoting the blue economy, and mitigating maritime pollution, among others, he added. Vietnam's wish. Vietnam has expressed hope for Philippines' participation in a multilateral mechanism for preventing hostilities or untoward incidents in the South China Sea. We also look forward to working closely with the Philippines in constant coordination. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nam Minh Chin said yesterday, citing the Memorandum of Agreement on the Prevention and Management of Incidents in the South China Sea during his bilateral meeting with President Marcos on the sidelines of the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations summit here. The Vietnamese leader also pushed for an intensified maritime cooperation between Manila and Hanoi, two of the six claimants in the South China Sea. Other parties in the long-standing maritime row are Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan, and China, with the latter claiming almost the entire resource-rich waters. An arbitral court in Hague voided China's expansive maritime claim in 2016, but the Chinese government does not recognize the ruling. At the 18th East Asia Summit, the president highlighted the need to create conditions for diplomatic solutions to problems of nuclear threats stemming from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and North Korea's ballistic missile test. He said the buildup of rising powers in global weapon stockpiles poses undue dangers to global peace and security. We call on the DPRK or Democratic Republic of Korea to fully comply with all relevant UN Security Council resolutions towards the realization of lasting peace and stability in a denuclearized Korean peninsula, he said, referring to North Korea by its official name. With regard to the war in Ukraine, Marcos said the Philippines has consistently reaffirmed its support for the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, especially in sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. The Philippines firmly believes that it's now necessary to create conditions for a diplomatic solution to the conflict in Ukraine. We call on all countries to play a constructive role in contributing to this endeavor, particularly our partners, he said during the forum, which was also attended by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Indonesian President and ASEAN Chairman Joko Widodo has expressed hope that the summit would be used by leaders to strengthen cooperation and not sharpen rivalries. U.S. reassurance. President Marcos has also received a reassurance from U.S. of its ironclad commitment to its alliance with the Philippines during a meeting with Harris. The meeting happened on the sidelines of the U.S. ASEAN summit. The U.S. president reaffirmed that the United States ironclad alliance commitment to the Philippines and highlighted the role of the U.S.-Philippines alliance plays in ensuring a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific, the White House said in a statement. Harris and Marcos also had an informal meeting with Japan's Kishida at a gala dinner Wednesday where they discussed the South China Sea row. Prime Minister Kishida exchanged views with President Marcos and Vice President Harris on the current situation surrounding the South China Sea and concurred with them to jointly tackle unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force, the Japanese foreign minister said. In a related development, Marcos thanked Australia for supporting the Philippines' stance on the South China Sea row and for providing ASEAN with assistance in education, defense, health, and digital transformation. I welcome Australia's active engagement in maritime-related issues and concerns in the region, the chief executive said during the third ASEAN-Australia Summit, also yesterday. And we, the Philippines, thank Australia for expressing concern on the latest actions directed against the Philippines in the South China Sea. We join Australia on the call for peace, stability, and respect for the 1992 Law of the Sea Convention, he added. Maritime security. In a statement on the meeting between Harris and Marcos, the White House said the two leaders discussed the maritime security environment in the South China Sea and reviewed opportunities to enhance bilateral maritime cooperation, including alongside like minded partners. Marcos and Harris also welcomed the designation of four additional sites for the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, a 2014 deal that grants the U.S. military access to the Philippine bases for training and humanitarian as well as disaster relief activities. According to the White House, the EDCA would drive American investment to local communities across the Philippines and improve the two countries' shared ability to rapidly deliver humanitarian and disaster relief. The White House said Marcos and Harris also welcomed the strength of the bilateral relationship between their countries and talk about opportunities to deepen commercial and economic cooperation and their shared commitment in upholding the rules-based international order. Last Wednesday's engagement was meant to build on the meetings of U.S. President Joe Biden and Harris with Marcos in Washington last May and on the U.S. Vice President's visit to the Philippines last November. During their summit, ASEAN leaders and Harris vowed to enhance maritime cooperation through mechanisms led by the regional bloc as well as uphold freedom of navigation and overflight. Harris and ASEAN leaders also discussed the importance of upholding international law on the South China Sea as well as strengthening ties on economics and trade, climate and energy, health, maritime issues, education, and cultural exchange. In Manila, Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro Jr. told lawmakers the Philippines has to take a defensive posture in response to China's expansionist moves. China impliedly admitted that they are expanding by using the word contain. Teodoro at yesterday's hearing of the House Appropriations Committee of Rep. Zaldico on the proposed 232.2 billion peso budget of the Department of National Defense for next year. First, they had the 9-dash line and which now became the 10-dash line. That alone means they wanted to extend their territory not just to the entire South China Sea, but even beyond, Teodoro said. That is why we have to create a deterrent posture with the additional reports from Tia Lee Brago. Pinoy is dissatisfied with government efforts versus inflation. Report by John Vic Mateo to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. With increasing food prices during the country's inflation rate, driving the country's inflation rate, a new survey conducted by Okta Research found that Filipinos remain least satisfied with the government's efforts to reduce poverty and control the rising cost of basic commodities. Results of the July 2022 to 26 survey released on Thursday found that only 34% of the respondents were satisfied with the government's performance in managing inflation. 32% were dissatisfied, while 34% were undecided. Meanwhile, only 36% were satisfied with the government in terms of reducing poverty, with 26% dissatisfied and 38% undecided. Marcos' administration also obtained a satisfaction rate of less than the majority in four other issues, reducing the amount of taxes, 38% satisfied, 20% dissatisfied, fighting graft and corruption, 44% satisfied, 21% dissatisfied, controlling population growth, 48% satisfied, 17% dissatisfied, and reducing hunger, 48% satisfied, and 16% dissatisfied. Out of the 24 issues included in the survey, the government obtained its highest satisfaction rating in terms of productivity, quality tertiary, providing quality tertiary and technical education, 74% satisfied and 7% dissatisfied. It was followed by providing quality and secondary education, 72% satisfied, 8% dissatisfied. Providing quality and affordable healthcare, 72% satisfied and 8% dissatisfied. Responding to natural disasters, 72% satisfied, 5% dissatisfied. And protecting the welfare of overseas Filipino workers, 70% satisfied and 6% dissatisfied. These were followed by building public infrastructure, 69% satisfied, 6% dissatisfied. Defending the integrity of Philippine territory against foreigners, 66% satisfied, 10% dissatisfied. Preparing for terrorist threats, 64% satisfied, 10% dissatisfied. Improving foreign relations, 63% satisfied and 6% dissatisfied. And protecting human rights, 62% satisfied, 8% dissatisfied. Other issues included in the survey were promoting peace and order, 59% satisfied, 10% dissatisfied. Fighting criminality, 58% satisfied, 12% dissatisfied. Ensuring food security, 57% satisfied and 14% dissatisfied. Stopping the destruction of the environment, 56% satisfied and 13% dissatisfied. And equal enforcement of the law, 56% satisfied and 10% dissatisfied. Compared to the results of a similar survey last March, Okta noted a drop in satisfaction in a number of key issues. For instance, it dropped 10 points in terms of providing quality and secondary education from 82% to 72%, 9 points in protecting the welfare of OFWs from 79% to 71%, and 8 points in responding to disasters from 80% to 72%. Meanwhile, dissatisfaction in managing inflation dropped from 36 to 32%, but it increased in terms of reducing taxes from 11% to 20%. Fight graft and corruption from 16% to 21%, and controlling population growth from 12% to 17%. The survey had 1,200 adult respondents and a margin of error of plus minus 3% for national percentages. Moving on to our global headline. US, Chinese, and Russian officials gather at Southeast Asia Summit. Report by Martin Abugao through Agence France Press and Philippine Star. Jakarta, Indonesia. US Vice President Kamala Harris, Chinese Premier Li Qiang, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will attend an East Asia Summit in Indonesia on Thursday, offering an opportunity for direct, high-level diplomacy between the rivals. The 18-nation meeting will bring Washington and Beijing into contact a day after Premier Li Qiang warned major powers must manage their differences to avoid a new Cold War ahead of the G20 summit in New Delhi this week, where Chinese President Xi Jinping will be absent. Interactions between the officials from the world's top two economies will be closely watched as they seek to control tensions that risk flaring anew over issues ranging from Taiwan to ties with Moscow and the competition for influence in the Pacific. To keep differences under control, what is essential now is to oppose picking sides, to oppose bloc confrontation, and to oppose a new Cold War, Lee told regional leaders on Tuesday. Harris held her own talks with Southeast Asian leaders on the importance of upholding international law in the South China Sea. According to a statement from her office, the disputed waterway where Chinese claims have angered several Southeast Asian nations. Thursday's summit will be the first time top US and Russian officials have sat around the same table in almost 2 months after US and European officials condemned Lavrov at the July ministerial meeting over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It comes as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced $1 billion in new assistance to Ukraine in a surprise visit to Kiev on Wednesday. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Japanese PM Fumio Kishida, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol, and Canada's Justin Trudeau and Australian PM Anthony Albanese will attend the summit, as well as leaders from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. G2 host Modi addressed ASEAN leaders on Thursday morning, telling them it is essential to build a post-COVID rules-based world order and make collective efforts to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific, using another term for the Asia-Pacific region. Thursday's talks come several months after Blinken traveled to Beijing, the first visit by the top U.S. diplomat in nearly 5 years, where he met Xi as well as former Foreign Minister King Gang. Broken. The meeting was expected to be a fiery affair despite the differences between major powers, according to a Southeast Asian diplomat who will attend. They will state their positions. These meetings are not tense, especially as the leaders level where some degree of decorum will be observed. The group will issue a negotiated joint statement after the summit. While the gathering can bring major players together, its ability to help resolve a range of regional and global issues is limited, experts say. It is a sign of the ASEAN convening power, but lately we can say that the East Asia Summit is broken. It has been turned into a forum for talking points, said Aaron Connolly, senior fellow at the Singapore-based think tank IISS. While Thursday's meeting will be more geopolitical in scope, big powers used earlier talks in Jakarta to shore up alliances and lobby the Southeast Asian bloc. Lee traveled on a Chinese-funded high-speed train project between capital Jakarta and the Javan city of Bandung with a senior Indonesian minister on Wednesday. Harris held separate meetings with Indonesian President Joko Widodo and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., both ASEAN members, on the sidelines of the summit. The Vice President reaffirmed the United States' ironclad alliance commitment to the Philippines and highlighted the role of the U.S.-Philippine alliance plays in ensuring a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific, our office said in a statement. South Korea's Yoon reportedly pushed for the bloc to counter North Korea's nuclear threats, calling for any military cooperation with the country to stop. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres will also give an address on the sidelines of the summit later on Thursday. ASEAN members are holding bilateral meetings with India, Australia, and the UN on Thursday. Good morning, admin. Thanks for joining. Moving on to our regional update. IAS recommends dismissal of 8 cops in Gemboy Slay. Report by Emmanuel Tupas to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. The Internal Affairs Service of the Philippine National Police has recommended the dismissal from service 8 PNP personnel in connection with the killing of 17-year-old Gerhod Jemboy Baltasar in Navotas last month. In a resolution released yesterday, the IAS found Executive Master Sergeant Roberto Balais Jr., Staff Sergeants Antonio Bugayong Jr., Jerry Maliban, and Nico Pines Esquilon, Corporal Edmard Jake Blanco, and Patrolman Benedict Manganda liable for grave irregularity in the performance of duty and for conduct unbecoming of a police officer. The 6 police officers admitted that they opened fire at the victim, IAS Inspector General Triambolo said. Also found guilty were Captains Mark Joseph Carpio and Luisito de la Cruz, whom the IAS said were liable for grave neglect of duty. The IAS has submitted a copy of the resolution to the National Capital Region Office for Police Office or NCRPO, which has the authority to approve its recommendation. If their dismissal is approved, the police officers will lose all their benefits except for their leave credits. Triambolo, in a text message to the Star, said the police officers violated standard operating procedures when they fired at Baltazar. First, while he was on a boat, and second, when he jumped into the water. Based on the testimonies of witnesses, the police intended to kill the teenager. There was intent to kill kasi sabi ng witnesses, there were successive bursts of gunfire, Triambolo said. Carpio and De La Cruz were liable as they were the team leaders and had direct supervision of their subordinates, the IAS official said. Triambolo explained that even if the bullet that killed Baltazar was not traced to a particular police officer, all the suspects are still liable as there was conspiracy on their part. The policeman mistook Baltazar for a shooting suspect they were pursuing in Barangay North Bay Boulevard, South Comnaran on August 2. LTO revokes ex-cop's driver's license, reported by Romina Cabrera to the Philippine Star. Over viral road rage case. Manila, Philippines. The Land Transportation Office has revoked the driver's license of dismissed police officer Wilfredo Gonzalez over the viral road rage incident where he cocked a gun at a cyclist in Quezon City. The LTO confirmed yesterday that Gonzalez's driver's license has been revoked. He was banned from driving a motor vehicle for 2 years. He was also fined 4,000 pesos for the administrative violations. Gonzalez is facing a string of complaints, including reckless driving, disregarding traffic signs, obstruction of traffic, and improper person to operate a motor vehicle. The LTO had earlier imposed a 90-day preventive suspension on Gonzalez. The agency said the penalty imposed on Gonzalez was prescribed under Republic Act 4136 or the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, as well as the Joint Administrative Order or 2014-01. Gonzalez failed to appear during a hearing last week and only surrendered his driver's license through his sons following the show cause order issued by the LTO. Gonzalez, a dismissed employee of the Supreme Court Associate Justice, was recorded on video physically and verbally attacking Alan Badiola during an altercation in Quezon City. Quezon City Police District Director Brigadier General Nicolas Torre III resigned from his post after receiving flack for hosting a press conference for Gonzalez at the QCPD headquarters. And finally, on our regional updates, prosecutor disbarred for foul remarks versus justices. Report by Daphne Galvez to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. A prosecutor has been disbarred after hurling offensive remarks toward justices and insulting the bar confident, according to the Supreme Court. In a February 21 decision, the SC disbarred Perla Ramirez for violating the lawyer's oath and code of professional responsibility and accountability. Ramirez was suspended in July 2014 following a complaint filed by residents and employees of the condominium she lived for unruly and offensive behavior from 1990 to 2007. In 2016, she sought to have her suspension lifted. Lawyer Maria Cristina Layusa, former bar confidant, advised Ramirez to file a motion and submit a sworn statement that she did not practice law during her suspension. Ramirez, instead of complying, questioned Layusa's authority. Bruha ka. Oh, bruha ka. You are a disgrace to the legal profession. Use your brains. You are just a clerk. Ramirez told Layusa in 2017 after her request to lift the suspension was denied. Are those justices bar exam passers? She added. Ay, kaya pala. Wala ka. Shugbak ka ngayon. And moving now to sports. Oy, good morning, Rose. Rose Biag Alfresio is watching. Good morning, Rose. Thanks for joining me. Kumusta na lang kay June, Rose? Cone back on Gila's saddle. Report by Olmain Leyba to the Philippine Star. Manila, Philippines. It's back to the Gilas Pilipinas bench and the Asian Games for multi-titled Team Cone. He may not have the luxury of time and manpower like he did with the Centennial team in 1998, but Cone is upbeat. He could put up a fighting squad for this latest mission come September 23 in Hangzhou, China. We'll do our best. The two-time Grand Slam winner said yesterday when he was announced chief tactician of Gilas for the ASEAN following Chot Race's departure. The plan is to bring back the PBA stalwarts from the FIBA World Cup crew, such as June Mar Fajardo, Japhet Aguilar, Scotty Thompson, R.R. Pogoy, and WC pool members Chris Newsom and Calvin Oftana. Then add naturalized players Justin Brownlee and Ange Kouame to the mix and fill up the slots left by Gila stalwarts based in Japan and Korea like Dwight Ramos, Kai Soto, Kiefer Ravena, and Ren Sabando with versatile players. Cone, who will be assisted by Reyes deputies Jong Oichico and Josh Reyes, and bring his own lieutenants Richard Del Rosario and L.A. Tenorio, said he will form a team built around ball movement and defense. We're going to be focused on ball movement and we're going to be very defensive oriented. I think that's going to be our edge in the ASEAN Games, said Cone. We're really looking for guys who are two-way players. They can do some damage on the offense. They can also be great defenders. Cone has set a training start on Monday for a 12-man team with one or two practice players with Ginebra. A 5 to 6 day camp at Inspire Academy is also the pipeline prior to leaving for China for the campaign that starts with group games against Bahrain, Thailand, and Jordan. That's not an easy schedule, but it's doable. We'll see how it goes. What's our chances? If we're playing the way we want to play, I don't think there's nobody we can't beat, he said. Especially with Justin around, I have good faith in Justin. He makes people around him better, and no matter who you surround him with, they're going to play better than how they normally play. We're not going out there to guarantee the goal, but we have a chance, and we're going to go for it. Ginebra Governor Alfrancis Chua and PBA Commissioner Willie Marshall were designated team manager and deputy team manager respectively. Cone's appointment was formalized during a board meeting presided by PBA Chairman Ricky Vargas yesterday. The PBA is all in, said Vargas. He said it was a high-risk endeavor that the Pro League is ready to take in the name of the country. If we fail, it's a high risk. But when the board discussed it, we were single-minded about it. Kung hindi tayo kikilo, sino pa? The PBA has never been afraid to fail. The governors were saying we were not afraid when it was COVID, and we're not afraid today, especially for a good cause, which is the Philippine team, said Vargas. And that concludes our news updates for today. And here again is a summary of our top stories for today. Tomato price hits as high as 300 peso per kilo. Marcos hits dangerous use of Coast Guard ships. Pinoy is dissatisfied with government efforts versus inflation. US, Chinese, and Russian officials gather at Southeast Asia Summit. IAS recommends dismissal of 8 cops in Gemboy Slay. LTO revokes ex-cop's driver's license. Prosecutor disbarred for foul remarks versus justices. And finally, Team Cone back on Gila's saddle. Sa lahat po ng nag-join via TikTok, maraming salamat po sa inyong pagantabay at sa pakikinig sa ating pagbabalita ngayong araw na to. Para sa mga nag-join din sa atin sa YouTube at sa Facebook, maraming salamat din po. Tomorrow po, wala po tayong live streaming ng Magkasangga sa Buhay at meron lang po tayong isang mahalagang event na kinakailangan na atinan. So, we might be moving it this afternoon or on Sunday morning. Depende po sa availability po ng ating guest din. So, yun po. No, wala pong promises but we will try our best. Ito po ang inyong Kuya Dong nagsasabing God bless po sa araw na to, sa lahat po ng mga nanonood, nakikinig, at stay safe po. Stay safe.